just felt like too much. And so part of the reason it felt so daunting is because most people who climb El Cap spend 3 to 5 days on the wall. And so this is a photo I took once while climbing the wall in a day of just some folks that we were passing by. These guys gave us some coffee as we went by. We're like, oh, cool, like, nice to see you. But basically, most people camp on the wall for 3 to 5 days. They haul all their equipment. They live on the side of the mountain in order to climb it. And so I had grown up with that as the dominant method in which people climbed El Cap. And so even just the idea of hiking up there without a rope, without any of this equipment. I mean, look at the hundreds of pounds of equipment that these guys have with them in order to survive on the wall like this. The idea of going up there with none of that and just climbing it by yourself was pretty mind-blowing. I mean, it was hard for me to really wrap my head around that. And so the first step to wrap my head around it is the physical capability, I guess. And so, as I sort of grappled with the magnitude of the climb, I knew that fundamentally I had to actually be able to climb a wall like that. And so that just basically relies on a base of just normal climbing. So you can see in this photo, I'm sport climbing. I have a harness, I have a rope, it's all totally safe. But this is the sort of day in, day out practice climbing that I was doing for years. To be honest, I've done this my whole life because it's what I love to do. But the point is that this type of practice climbing is sort of the foundation upon which I could build this dream of free soloing El Cap. And so again, this is just a random picture, climbing with my girlfriend at a cave near my home in Las Vegas. But this is basically the day in, day out, like building up the fitness, building up the physical capabilities to know that I could climb a 3,000-foot wall without getting fatigued, basically. And then there's also the more structured, specific finger training. You can see in this photo, I'm dangling from the tips of just a few fingers. And this is basically to train in a more specific way for the types of movement that I would experience on El Cap. And this is just kind of part of normal training for climbing. This is actually a picture of the inside of my van, which I was living in throughout this whole process. But so at a certain point, I knew that I had the physical capabilities of climbing this 3,000-foot wall. And so then I sort of had to shift my focus from the general, like, what am I capable of this, to can I actually do this specific act of free soloing El Cap? And so, basically once I had a broad base of fitness, I kind of knew that I was physically capable of the challenge. But then to actually be able to execute it without error was the next big challenge. I mean, really that's the main challenge. So I came into Yosemite with a whole list, basically a to-do list of things to work on. And so this is a photo of my friend Conrad Anker, who's also a premier alpinist and actually in the world. And we're climbing on El Cap with a rope, with equipment. This is just sort of a day out practice climbing. And you can see he has an empty backpack on. And so we actually climbed the first half of El Cap all the way up to the middle of the wall. So 500 meters of climbing, basically, right to the center, to this one specific crack that had a bunch of loose blocks inside it. And what's interesting, when I talk about free soloing El Cap, it's a 3,000-foot face. That's literally thousands of hand and foot movements. And if there's even one body length section of rock that's blank or dirty or wet or somehow stops my progress, then I just can't climb the whole thing. It's interesting because with a challenge of that scale, you're like, oh, it's a 3,000-foot climb. If there's even a single move that I can't do, then the whole thing is impossible. And so I was taking days like this with Conrad to go up and sort of check some of the boxes off. Like, I knew this one section had a bunch of loose rocks in it. I wanted to remove the rocks to basically make the crack a little bit safer to climb. But the thing is, you can't just throw the rocks down because there might be tourists hiking along the base. There might be, hikers out looking at birds and things. Like, basically, you can't just throw rocks off the wall because you could kill somebody by accident. So we climbed all the way up there. We packed all the rocks into a backpack, and then we rappelled all the way back down to the ground. And as we were doing it, it feels totally absurd. You're like, what a waste of a day to climb half of a wall, pack a backpack full of rocks, and rappel back down. It's like, it's not even, it doesn't even feel like we've done anything. But it did clean up this 3-meter section of crack, which is not even one of the hardest parts of the route, but it's just a critical section that basically every section is critical if you can't do it. And so This is just one example of a day of work on this project.